I'm Heather Vale.
And I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones.
And joining us today is Dr. Joe Rubino, who's an author, a coach, and one of the world's foremost experts on the topic of self-esteem. Joe, thank you so much for being here with us.
Always a pleasure, Heather.
So, not a lot of people talk about self-esteem as much as you do. Why is it such an important topic?
Well, if you look at all the ills that plague our society, everything from divorce on one end to war on the other, bullying in the schools, dropouts of high school, college, you look at violent behavior, drug and alcohol addiction, all poverty, all the things that we don't want, they're all sourced in low self-esteem. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true as well. For someone to have a life that's meaningful, that's fulfilling, full of abundance, rich relationships, fun and happiness, high self-esteem is a critical component.
Okay.
Very true.
Now, some people would say that self-esteem is a reflection of the ego, and we're taught growing up that that's not good. You know, you don't brag about your accomplishments, you don't think of yourself as being better than other people, and some people interpret having a high self-esteem as being like that. What is it really?
That's one of the common misunderstandings, misnotions. By my definition, high self-esteem and high ego are completely 180 degrees in opposition.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why. People with high ego, by definition, are concerned with getting their own agenda across, oftentimes at the expense of other people. Those with high self-esteem always operate from a win-win golden rule type scenario where they have an appreciation for what it's like in the other person's world. They want to honor other people, and it has to be something that works for them, works for the other person, works for the world in general. So by my definition, there's 5 critical components that high self-esteem individuals possess.
Okay.
The first is competence. They're able to take an idea and manifest that idea into reality. So competent people know that they can do that with velocity. They can actually turn their ideas into manifestation. They can create their dream lives. The second critical component is worthiness. People who have high self-esteem feel like they're worthy. They feel like they are good people. They're not ashamed of who they are, so they don't have to put on a false facade all the time to cover up what they're trying to hide inside, which is that they're not good enough, that they're not worthy, that they're unlovable, that they're defective, that nobody likes them. So when they're authentic, that authenticity comes forward, their charisma increases, their personal effectiveness goes up, and they are able to get what they want out of life because their energy is conducive to attracting that kind of energy. The third component is personal power. Those with high self-esteem possess personal power, which is when they speak, people listen. So those with personal power command attention, they command authority, they're respected. The fourth component is significance. People who feel like they're significant feel like they matter. And when they have the love and the attention of other people, then they can give that love and attention back to the world and back to others. So that significance is kind of a loop. The more they feel significant, the more they can empower others, the more they can make other people's lives better. And of course, that fifth component being an appreciation for what it's like in the other person's world, very much different from high ego. So by that definition, somebody like Hitler, you know, you've heard how many people say Hitler had high self-esteem? Not by my definition, he had as low self-esteem as you could get because he could care less about other people. As a matter of fact, his agenda came first at the expense of other people. And so he didn't have high self-esteem.
And one of the things you talk about, significance, I mean, that's a big thing that's been discovered to be the reason for a lot of gang-related activity. People join gangs at an early age because they want to be significant. They don't have money, they don't have education, they don't have access to goods and services, so they join a gang and they start selling drugs to feel significant.
They want to belong.
Yeah.
You know, it's a basic human need. And when people feel like they're an outcast, they're an outsider, they don't belong, then they'll do just about anything to win approval. Because who they are is really, I don't belong. I'm not good enough, so I need to join this gang, I need to get these tattoos, I need to fit in somehow to form an identity because the identity that I have is not one that I'm proud of. So let me grab onto something because something's better than nothing.
That's
Yeah,
unfortunate.
okay. So basically what you're saying is when someone does not possess those 5 characteristics, then what happens is it manifests into basically a facade that is trying to say to the world, yeah, I have those characteristics, but that's when it's a big ego. That's when it's like, bigger than life brashness and not caring about others.
Yes, and when we don't have high self-esteem, what happens is we are constantly at the effect of what other people say and do. We're listening to that little gremlin on our shoulder that's our negative self-talk. And we think it's our intuition, but that negative self-talker is constantly trying to do one of two things. Protect us from the dangers that we see out there in the world, so keep us from risking unnecessarily, keep us from getting hurt. So even though it looks like that negative self-talk is saying, don't go to that party. Remember the last time you went to the party, what happened? Nobody talked to you. You don't want to do that again. You made a fool of yourself. You went home and you felt worse than you did before you went to that party. So that negative self-talk is there to protect us. The other function that the negative self-talker has is to have us prove that we're worthy when we intrinsically don't think that we are. So we're on that treadmill constantly trying to prove that we are good enough, but it's on a foundation that says I'm not. I'm not good enough, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm defective, I'm flawed. And so when we think we're flawed, what happens? We scan for the flaw in ourselves first, and then of course in others, because we can't be with the fact that we're the only one flawed, so we look to take other people out. We look to invalidate them. We look to make them small, and that's how the whole vicious cycle deteriorates. We constantly try to do one-up on people. We try to prove that we're better than they are. We try to dominate them and avoid being dominated, and it's all because of this mistaken assumption that we have that we're not enough. So we have to do something to survive in however we picture this world: cruel, unforgiving, scarce, whatever.
Now, in your personal journey, a lot of people get into the work because in the work they do to help the world because of their personal journey. Is this something that you personally worked through? Did you have these challenges coming up as a youth?
Well, I did. Starting when I was 5 years old, I was playing down at the schoolyard, and some teenagers came along, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, and they decided to have a game of football. The only problem is they used me as their football.
What?
So they passed me around, they ladled me, they handed me off, and then somebody went long and threw me long. And I fell, hit my head on the concrete, went home at 5 years old with a big egg on my head. And I made up that I was small and insignificant, couldn't defend myself. People were mean and cruel, and the world was a dangerous place.
Yeah.
So I withdrew. I became an extreme introvert. I became shy. So I would cross the street when I would see someone that I knew because I didn't want to engage, because it was dangerous to engage. I didn't want to say the wrong thing because you never know what could happen. So people thought that I was avoiding them and I was a snob.
You were.
And I was, but it was not because of them.
You weren't a snob, but you were avoiding them.
I was avoiding them.
Yeah.
But it was all self-preservation because
Right.
I had made up that I have to do these things to protect myself. And so I chose a profession, dentistry, where I got to work on people who couldn't talk back because my hands were in their mouth. And, this is
I always
all invisible
wondered
to me.
what's up with that,
I didn't realize I was doing this. These are all subconscious.
Wow.
At the age of 36, I was told I couldn't lead 3 people in silent prayer all my life. And so it wasn't until I went into a personal development program and learned more about myself and what was holding me back and how my most important values were being dishonored, values like love and contribution and creativity and belonging, that I decided that I would reinvent myself and live from a declaration of the qualities that I would, from that point on, decide to be known for, as opposed to the qualities that I had created all this evidence over the first 36 years of my life saying, this is just how I am, and there's nothing that I can do about it.
Right, yeah.
So you left dentistry, you said no more dentistry.
Well, I created a plan to transition out of dentistry into personal development, and it began with creating a declaration for what my life purpose was going to be about. And I decided that because I had been inspiring no one to that point, I would live a life purpose where I would be an inspiration first to myself and then to other people.
Now, how did this go over in the household? Like, imagine you coming home and say, I'm done with the dentistry stuff, and then your wife saying, that's nice, honey, or how are we going to pay the bills?
Well, by society standards, I was a very successful dentist. I was in the top 1% of practices, 7 full-time doctors working in my practice, 15 staff, 250 new patients a month in one of my 2 offices. So people are looking at me like, what's wrong with you? You have the respect of your peers, you have the appreciation of your patients, you're making a lot of money, and here I am thinking, is this all there is to life? So it wasn't until I got in touch with the costs of what it was costing me not to honor those most important values that now I could reinvent myself from the place of, okay, if I was an inspiration, how would I inspire someone? If I was a contribution, who could I contribute to? Whose life could I make better?
So are you at I mean, I'm just trying to imagine this. Did you just say done with dentistry?
No.
And now, okay, did it slowly
I
ramp down,
transitioned,
ramp
yes.
up?
I went
Okay.
from 5.5 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 days a
Nice.
week, 2 patients a day.
As
2
you were
days a
getting more money,
Right, as
doing
I,
what you love
yes.
to do. Okay.
And
And we'll talk
eventually-
about passion in another interview as well,
Yeah.
where we're going to go more in depth into that. But let's talk a little bit about the values, because you've mentioned that a few times. It seems like knowing your values and honoring your values are one of the keys to increasing self-esteem. That's an area that I find a lot of people have trouble pinpointing, like actually knowing what our values are and seeing them. Yes, this is what it is. This is what I'm going to live for. So how do they go through that process?
Well, values form the fabric of who we are at our core. And when the threads of that fabric are pulled, in other words, when our values are dishonored, we shut down in our communication, we become angry, we become depressed, life doesn't work, we don't know why it's not working, but it's because our values aren't working. So the way that we identify what our most important core or key values are is we ask ourselves, what qualities need to be put into place in order for life to be happy and abundant and fulfilling and fun? And so we look at what are values. They range from things like love, belonging, contribution, safety, security, recognition, adventure, freedom. There's just literally dozens and dozens of values. And so we can ask ourselves, okay, if I had to do without every value but one, which value would that be? So for me, that would be love. That's my primary core value. And so, okay, so after love is fulfilled, what else is important? For me, creativity is an important value, and I wasn't being creative at all. I mean, I was being creative in a minor sense with carving, teeth,
Yeah.
but, and there's nothing wrong with, the dental profession is a great profession, very much in need,
And some dentists kind of are
and,
artists.
and many love it.
Yeah.
But it just, I just felt like there was something missing for me.
Right.
So, as far as values are concerned, it's about what needs to be honored to make your life work so that it's fulfilling and rewarding and your relationships work and you're having fun.
Well, I'm impressed. I mean, I don't know of anyone who's done that, who's just said, hey, I got this great profession, it's going really well, and I just don't like it, I'm going to leave it. Because most people would stay in for the money.
Well, I'll tell you, it's tempting because not only the money, but I had gone to school for all those years. I had
Big investment.
a big investment in my education. I had,
Time and
the thought coming from a perspective where I wasn't in touch with what my gifts were. I didn't know that I had any. I could swear to you I couldn't speak. I didn't know that I could write. I didn't know that I could inspire anyone. I didn't know that I could do anything other than dentistry. So here I am with a thought. One of my coaches asked me, if you didn't need the money, would you continue to practice? And my answer was, absolutely not.
that sums it up.
But the question was, what are you going to do? And how are you going to replace that income? And how are you going to contribute to the world?
Yeah.
And so that was the question I got to stand in moment by moment. And, being abundant is all about creating value for people. It's about giving people something that makes their lives better. And when you do that, it comes back to you tenfold.
Yeah.
And-
Okay. So if you can give a tip to the viewers, a few things that they can do right now to increase their self-esteem, because I would say like almost 100% of people in the world could use with a little more self-esteem. What do you suggest that they do?
3 primary steps, and this is part of my self-esteem system that I created, not only through the work that I did personally to overcome my own challenges, but literally through more than 2,000 personal coaching clients, and in speaking with hundreds of thousands of people in groups or whatever. The first of those 3 steps is, number 1, heal and complete your past.
Okay.
As long as we are operating out of mistaken assumptions or interpretations that we made when we were kids, early on, before the age of 6, someone said or did something, and we either bought into that negativity, you're not good enough, you're ugly, you're stupid, you don't belong, you smell funny. Whatever it was that had us like, oh, geez, maybe I do. Let me look. And when we look, we scan for the flaw. And the more we scan, the more we find the flaw, and the more we create and attract that very thing that we're most afraid of into our lives. So before long, we've created first dozens, then hundreds, and then thousands of pieces of evidence that say, that's just the way I am. I'm an introvert. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not good with people. I'm not good socially. I can't make money. Whatever it is that we make up about ourselves. Or, instead of buying into somebody else's negativity, like a name that we're called, or a bullying episode, or an abusive situation, someone says something very innocently, like a parent might say, Steve, what's the matter with you? And we think, jeez, let me look.
I still hear that from my stepmom.
And when we look, we find what it is that we scan for. So whether we bought into negativity or we made it up, the result is the same. Moving forward, we now create evidence after evidence that reinforces that initial fear that we had, and before long, we're absolutely convinced that that's just the way we are, that's just the way other people are, and that's just the way the world in general is, whatever we made up about those three individuals. So healing and completing your past is healing it such that you create a new interpretation of who you are in the world. One that isn't based on all of this stuff that you bought into or made up. And that frees you up, and there's so much that I could say more, but I know we're limited in time here. So let me go on. The second component is assessing what's so in your present life right now. And when we assess what's so, we look at what are your most important values. Are they being honored? Are they being dishonored? What are your life rules? Is life working for you? Or if not, what's missing that could be put into place to make your life work? What are your gifts? Are you living them and developing them and sharing them with the world? Or don't you think you had any, like I didn't? Do you have a life purpose? Are you declaring that life purpose? Are you empowered and inspired to live your life and to embrace problems and enjoy the process of life? The third area is designing a future that is as if you had a magic wand and you could wave it over your life and you could create your dream life in all 6 key areas of life. Your health and appearance, your wealth and your finances, your job or your business, your relationships, area of personal and spiritual development, and the area of having fun and recreating and pursuing your passions. So in all those 6 key areas, what does your dream life look like? And do you see that dream life as inevitable? And in another section, we'll talk more about how to manifest the life of your dreams based on that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank
Joe.
you so much, Joe. This has been really great. A lot of good information for people that pretty much everyone can use. So thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So if people want to follow up with you, they want to learn more about self-esteem, they want to find out what you do, where do they go?
They can go to theselfesteembook.com, TheSelfesteem book.com, and you'll find all about my self-esteem elevation program. We also have 2 programs that we actually certify people to learn these principles. First to champion children, and that's highselfesteemkids.com, and the program to learn these principles to champion adults is highselfesteemadults.com. Theselfesteembook.com, highselfesteemkids, highselfesteemadults.com.
Very nice.
Thank you,
Well,
Joe.
thank you so much, Joe. This has been a lot of great information for the people watching and stuff that everyone can use. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, and thank you.
I'm Heather Vale,
And I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones.
helping you heat up your success at hotsuccesssecrets.com.